Michelle Jackson, Executive Director, Human Services Council. You were at today's State of the City. Mayor Adams, Hostos Community College, beautiful space. I was in the upper deck, just so you know.
Yeah,
For
I made it to the
context,
lower
I was in
deck.
the upper deck. This is the quick take, reactions. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think being in the nonprofit sector, being invited, always nice. And I think
I
I,
got it. This is my first invite. I didn't get
oh
invited. That was
yeah,
my first
I think,
invite.
well, this
First
might,
invite.
for, I definitely, my first invite under this administration and appreciated very much that, the mayor, he has a limited time. Every sentence counts. And he did shout out the nonprofit sector for our work. And I think, that matters. And I want to give him credit for that in his administration. I also think really moving to see like a whole group of women of color leading New York in the first row. I mean, those are really my two general impressions. Like, I think that's really incredible. And then as he went through the slides of, what their vision for New York is this year, it's human services. It's human services. It's human services.
What
And
does that what does that feel like to hear that? Because I'm observing that, and again, I have a lens on workforce, so I have thoughts about his 5 million and in 5 years, or I'm sorry, 5 million in 2025.
mhm.
But I'm just like, as this is going through this button by button, there's a focus on public safety, of course, and we know where his orientation is on public safety, right? And there's a focus on it's a working class agenda. He's a working people's agenda, right? And all I keep thinking is it just a shout out to the human services sector or workforce development providers? Is there more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the issue, is that it's great that he recognizes the nonprofit sector in a line, but when you look at what his other visions are, and even the framing, as you mentioned, the kind of delivering, he wrote it down, like delivering for working class New Yorkers. And it's like, well, your investments don't match that because there's 125,000 human services workers in New York, and we did not get any type of kind of deal for a cost of living adjustment like the other unions that he did shout out. And obviously, we're very happy to be there, which, as they should be. But there's
And if
125,000.
you weren't in the room, if you weren't in the room, it was a rocket. There was an energy in the room, especially in response to labor unions, the commitments and connections to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mayor has struck a number of collective bargaining agreements and union contracts, which is super crucial. And the sector is only partially unionized across different unions, so we don't have that same collective bargaining tool. But the mayor does have a tool, the cost of living adjustment, to invest in human services workers, and has not done so in a true meaningful way. They've done the workforce enhancement the last 2 years, but it's a small pot of money. And, we're 16.5% behind DC 37 in terms of increases because of these deals that we have not been included in. So when you talk about delivering for working class New Yorkers, there's 125,000 workers that you can help lift up those salaries, and half of them are at the poverty line. So I think that's, the
And what
takeaway is like, I
can I
see
just
that
ask,
and I'm
like,
like, ugh.
yeah, that's frustrating, agonizing. At the same time, though, in the room, um, there's a whole bunch of people in this space. There's elected officials, there's city council members, there's others of us sort of circling around. Where you were you feeling like folks were on the same page? Was there a vibe here in terms of how folks were feeling about this speech or what he was bringing forward today?
I mean, that's such a hard question because, I think the mayor outlines a vision of New York, which is really great. And, I think I was also moved, like, I think a lot of people in the room, about origin story, and being, he put his ID, like, I don't know, like,
Yeah, he lands on his school photo ID.
yeah,
How can you not want that to be like, look at how far,
yeah.
look at how much, look at how amazing this story is. And yet, I think in the lives of everyday New Yorkers, there remains some pretty significant questions. By the way, I didn't hear much about asylum seekers. There was a
A
bullet on
nod.
asylum seekers specific to we need help from the feds, but there wasn't much more than that.
Right. Yeah. Very little on asylum seekers, except for, I think, a rightful call out, by the way. The federal government should be
100%.
doing much more, and the city is not doing enough, and they're not doing it in the right way. I mean, that's the HSC's perspective is, there's money coming into New York or being spent on asylum seekers should be going to nonprofits. lifting up not just, asylum seekers, but nonprofits are experts in serving asylum seekers. And the infrastructure that you build by contracting with a nonprofit means that the next New Yorker in line gets a quality service as well. And that's something that's really missing. And, he didn't cover a lot of the asylum seeker stuff, as you mentioned. And, he talked also about women, and supporting women. The sector is overwhelmingly women and women of color, and contracts have been stagnant for a decade or longer. And he's not investing in human services wages. And, I think especially when we framed in that way, women also need job supports like childcare, care for seniors. Women just unfortunately are often more the carers for their family. And he also talked about like domestic violence and other supports for women. And it's like, well, when you fund a human services worker for a quality job, you're also providing work supports to other women so that they can go to work.
And we didn't, and that's another thing there. There was not about an investment in women and the history of connectedness that this administration has to thinking about equity in a number of different ways. And to your point as well, championing the dynamic leaders who represent this city. We didn't hear about childcare here. And I think, and specifically as we think about the workforce, I mean, there's more and more pivot to childcare as an industry. It's an opportunity for entrepreneurship. It's an opportunity for business to be able to succeed, individuals, families to be able to do well. Low and moderate and upper income folks are struggling with childcare, but we didn't quite catch that. I don't know if I missed it though.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I don't remember a call out either, but that doesn't mean.
That doesn't mean we'll scan the text later.
Right.
Is there anything else that I mean, what would you have liked to have heard if he had a theme? If he said to you, "Listen, you reviewed my speech before he presents it today. What would you have liked to have seen?"
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, listen, I'm very single-minded in my approach to this stuff, right? Which is like just pay, right? It's human service workers deserve fair wages and quality services, right? And I think when going back to, he puts his ID card up and he's someone who has walked by these nonprofit organizations. He's probably been served by a lot of them. He knows the value of them. And in every layer of what he, in most of his vision for New York, whether it's public safety, better transportation, serving women, serving, helping people experiencing homelessness, asylum seekers, it's nonprofits, right? Like nonprofits make every community they touch better. And unfortunately, we're on this path where they're not because they're closing, they're having a really hard time hiring. And so it's really unfortunate. He's not the first mayor. He's one of a long line who have really taken the nonprofit sector for granted, that will always be there, that will continue to plod along and make it work. And that's just not where we are as a sector. And so I just wish that a mayor, because I can't even fault him, he's not the first, would recognize that the kind of divestment in the human services sector is a divestment in New York's communities, whether that's safety, jobs, childcare, job supports, all of those kind of pieces. And you don't have a vibrant New York, which was very clearly his vision, without a vibrant nonprofit sector.
And remind us again, what percentage of our workforce is the nonprofit workforce?
So the nonprofit workforce overall is, 20%. We're the
20%.
largest private employer in the state of New York. And they're overwhelmingly 80% women, 80% people of color.
And that's why it matters. And that's the difference. Those are working New Yorkers who are doing everything they can who are on their grind and are focused on making our city work and are getting stuff done. And that's why they need to be recognized and respected and paid. What is it again? Just pay, right?
Just pay.
Michelle, it's great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
More to come.
Absolutely.